Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing well today. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about conspiracy theorists and, a bunch of accusations that were thrown at recently me and Vaush, and how that connects to a lot of people's main character syndrome and thinking they're the center of the universe, and why exactly people believe in conspiracy theories when they're so, obviously false from just like taking a cursory glance at whatever the conspiracy theory is. So I'm going to start this off by talking about an incident that recently happened on Twitter, if we're going to call it an incident, and that is an accusation that was thrown at me and Vaush. Vaush is a well-known YouTuber, socialist, and horse enthusiast on the internet, and I wanted to read to you a tweet that was made about us by a Marxist-Leninist kind of tanky type by the name of Chris Legion. He might disagree with that label, but that's the label I'll give him. And he made a tweet about me, Vaush, and NAFO. If you don't know what NAFO is like this dumb internet cartoon dog meme where a lot of people who are anti the Russian invasion of Ukraine, not insane, they actually, put on these little cartoon dog avatars and they use it to like ratio Russian politicians. It's a fun, innocent little shitposty meme. Well, Chris Legion actually thinks NAFO, which also helps raise money for the Georgian Legion, might be more than that. In fact, he actually uses this suspicion of it being more than that to accuse me and Vaush of being an arm of the US deep state. Let me read you what he tweeted out. Here is liberal breadtuber Dylan Burns sporting the deformed Chihuahua avatar. Personal note, it's actually a Shiba Inu, which is a beautiful dog, and not like those dastardly Chihuahuas. This clown is part of a NATO state-sponsored troll farm. More proof that the Vaush community is straight up tied to US intelligence. He then has some pictures of my Twitter account and just some stuff I tweeted out, like a pinned tweet of while I was in Ukraine. So the first thing I want to say is I don't even know how this ties to Vaush, really. I mean, I know Vaush. I would consider Vaush a friend of mine. I have made content with Vaush before, and I hope to make content with Vaush again. But besides that, this really has no connection to Vaush. This tweet is almost entirely about me. So I can only look at this tweet and assume that this is just some weird attempt to kind of like snake Vaush into it because more people know who Vaush is than know who Dylan Burns TV is. And so this is an attempt to snake Vaush into, my existence on the platform and use me to accuse him of being part of the NATO troll farm and US intelligence. But also, right here, he accuses me of being part of US intelligence and a NATO troll farm and having ties to it. And I'm his tie. I am Vaush's tie to the US deep state. So if any of you have ever wondered who is Vaush's CIA manager, you're looking at him. Congratulations. Sorry, Vaush, that it got leaked. But he doesn't provide any evidence for, NAFO being a NATO state-sponsored troll farm because that's not true. There's no evidence for it because it's not real. That's not a thing that is based in reality. It's not even close to being based in reality. I don't have ties to US intelligence. I don't know what he means when he says I have ties to US intelligence. I know former veterans. My grandfather used to work at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. I mean, that's like the closest I can think of. My grandpa fought in Nam. I don't know. So I don't really have ties to US intelligence or would be a CIA agent to be Vaush's tie to US intelligence. And this isn't even the first time I've been accused of being part of the CIA. In fact, a few months ago, I think it was 2 months ago, I was accused of being the grandson of the current CIA director, Bill Burns, because we both have the same last name. And this wasn't an unironic, this wasn't an ironic accusation. This was an unironic accusation that I am the grandson of Bill Burns because we have a very common, similar Irish surname. It's the same one. That's it. I'd also like to reveal that I actually have uncovered that I have a amount of wealth that is amazing after finding out that, my grandfather is Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. So I'm going to be retiring from YouTube in the near future. Sorry to tell you guys about that. But why do people believe this nonsense? I mean, it's obviously silly, obviously bizarre. I remember telling Chris, please reflect on what you posted here. If you took this to someone at the DMV, what do you think they would say to you about you suspecting that Vaush has ties to the CIA because he knows me and I am somehow a CIA agent or part of a NATO operation. What do you think they would say to you? They would look at you like you're insane. They would call up the police department to put you in an insane asylum, right? So why does he believe it? And so I wanted to talk about the reasons people believe in conspiracy theories. Not just this, but also Lauren Boebert recently said, you know, that monkeypox was like a dem operation to like bump up support for the midterms.
And I think it's interesting. We have midterm elections coming up, and suddenly there's a new health emergency from the federal government. You know, I mean, President Ronald Reagan, I'm not looking for zombie Reagan to come and save America, but he really did say it best. He said, the most dangerous words are, I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help.
Mike Lindell was recently at CPAC continuing this election was stolen nonsense. 2020 was a big fraud.
At 3 in the morning, if they hadn't overrode the algorithms, if our great president Donald Trump and all of you had not overrode the algorithms of the machines, just like Carrie Lake just did last night, right? That was like a rerun, right? That was a rerun. Okay, she gets up by 12,000 votes in the middle of the night. Shut down the machines. Hurry, we got to do something. What are we going to do? Well, they couldn't do it this time because they overrode it.
We saw a lot of people pushing conspiracy theories about Bucha, trying to show like, hey, look at this footage of somebody moving their hand, and it's actually just a raindrop going down the screen. It is not actually a NATO-sponsored false flag attempt. So why do people believe this nonsense? Why do people keep believing in all these dastardly, just backwards conspiracy theories? And so I have 3 reasons that I am suspecting is why people believe in conspiracy theories. So the first one I call Tom Clancy syndrome, or you can call it main character syndrome. Both of these terms work. I just like Tom Clancy syndrome more. So Tom Clancy syndrome is the idea that you want to live in a Tom Clancy novel. Your life is boring. You go to work every day, you get bossed around, you come home, maybe, you know, you don't have many hobbies, or you don't feel like you have a lot of power in your life, or, you know, life isn't exactly what it was cracked up to be when you were a kid. You didn't get to fulfill your dreams, and now you work in an office space for, you know, maybe $18 to $20 an hour, and so you need to find a way to fulfill your life in other ways. Try to make yourself more important than you actually are. Not saying you shouldn't be paid more, not saying you shouldn't be unionized, but you're trying to pretend that you, instead of like, you know, trying to find fulfillment in other ways, like, you know, raising a child or, you know, bowling, you have decided to believe in conspiracy theories because you believe that somehow you were able to find the truth no one else was. You, somebody with no training, somebody with no expertise in any of the issues you're talking about, somebody with possibly not even a higher like form of knowledge in the field at all you're talking about. You could just be a Joe Schmo guy trying to figure out economics from you know, somebody on YouTube, or weapons manufacturing from somebody on YouTube, or, you know, gas attacks or the Holocaust or 9/11 or flat earth or any of these things for someone on YouTube or an internet forum. And now you believe that you've uncovered it all. You have uncovered what experts have not been able to uncover in the last 50 years, you from the comfort of your home. And now you have the truth. You're not like the rest of the sheeple. You're different. You were able to figure it out while everybody else was watching Marvel movies and, you know, eating hot chip and lying to the blah, 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 all of that, right? They were the normal sheep. You're not one of them. You're different. You figured it out. And now when you go online and you say, these ramblings about flat earth or the election being stolen or Bucha, or Chris Legion, for example, said that Ukraine genocided 14,000 people in Ukraine, which is a complete lie. The 14,000 number actually comes from the total amount of people who died in the last 8 years of war in the Donbass. So that would mean that the Ukrainian army genocided themselves. But why did he believe that? It's because he wants to be in a Tom Clancy novel. He thinks that he discovered the truth nobody else can discover, and that the establishment is trying to cover up. And the thing is about this is circular, because let's say he goes out of his circle and he talks to people, say like me or like other people who don't believe in the nonsense, and will be like, that's nonsense. Like I said here, I said, please just reflect for a moment. And instead of reflecting, he just uses this as more evidence to himself that, oh, look, this was a this was a NATO deep state operation, or look, they're trying to cover it up, or the reason I'm getting so much pushback is because I'm so right and they just don't want to admit it. When really, you're not Tom Clancy, you're not a secret agent, you're not James Bond, you're not a hero, you're not like Fred Hampton or Martin Luther King or John Brown or Eugene Debs, these people you're going to compare yourselves to and say, hey, the FBI fought against them. You're not any of those people. You're just a schizophrenic with an internet connection. Those people were targeted by the FBI and by other forces in the nation, but that's because they were actually influential. That's because they actually could possibly change the system. That's because, the politics then might have been slightly different than they are now, and the forces involved might have been slightly different. I'm sure the FBI is still infiltrating organizations to this day, but I'm telling you, it isn't you. They're not going to come down upon you just because you made a Twitter post about the 14,000 people in the Donbass, okay? You're not Tom Clancy. You're not James Bond. You're just a person on the internet who's gotten too big for his britches. So that's the first reason. I think it has to do with, their life maybe not being all it was cracked up to be, and they want to feel like they're the main character in an action movie. I think the second reason is something I like to call podcast nation. I believe that, with the advent of mass media, we've gotten a lot of amazing things. Everybody can, go on the internet and share their opinion. We're in a time of mass communication, which I think is beautiful, to be able to talk to somebody halfway across the world instantaneously. It actually is amazing. It helped lead to things like the Arab Spring and political revolutions around the world. But with this mass communication and this ease of access to saying stuff on the internet, it also means there's a lower barrier for entry when it comes to news, media, and podcasts. I mean, I wouldn't be able to have a podcast with, the Ukraine Report, which you can get on Spotify or on YouTube. I wouldn't have that, or my channel, or my Twitch channel, if it wasn't for the advent of mass media. If I had to be approved by CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, I probably wouldn't have been approved. Why? Because I don't have experience in media. I'm not classically trained. But here I am. I try my best to be responsible, but if this was the 1950s, I probably would not have a job doing this right now. I would probably not be a radio host. And this is true for tons of other people. And a lot of the people who have started podcasts, and I'm happy many have, but a lot of the people who have probably shouldn't. They bring on guests that they don't push back upon when they say conspiracy theories themselves. They could be conspiracy theorists themselves. They might lie and never correct themselves. A lot of people, including me, are kind of egomaniacs or, slightly narcissistic. Definitely if you're telling everybody to come listen to your podcast that you have something important to say that's going to be higher on average. And they might not want to correct themselves when they get something wrong. And who, are these people held accountable to? Are they held accountable to by some boss above them? Are they held accountable to by a bunch of editors who, choose what does go in the paper and what doesn't? No. The only person they're held accountable to is themselves and their viewers, which is kind of beautiful because it means that there's not going to be like a lot of self-censorship because the media company doesn't want you to like mess with their sponsors. But it also means there's going to be a lot of nonsense pushed out. And you want to know what? The more crazy, out there action movie stuff you say to explain the world's problems is going to get a lot more clicks and viewership and feedback than if you just give a sat down, rational explanation of why something might be going on and say, it's kind of complicated. It may not be that there's these lizard people at work. It might actually be a set of economic factors involving transcontinental, and boom, you've already lost them, right? You've lost them. But if you say lizard people really loud, then you can make like 80, what was it? How much was Alex Jones making a day? I mean, he was making like, what was it? Like $80 million a year or some crazy amount of money from InfoWars, like during 2018 and 2019. And everybody knows Alex Jones is crazy, but he still is getting that attention, still is making that money. There's no filter there. And he actually has a staff of editors on hand. They just let everything through. And so I think the barrier to entry for information is lower. Therefore, it's easier for people to access these conspiracy theories and be convinced by people on the internet that these conspiracy theories are true. When back in the day, you might have to go to a library and find some kind of in the back book that nobody else is really reading about conspiracy theories to be convinced. or it had to travel by word of mouth, which is how a lot of conspiracy theories spread back in the day. Or it was state-sponsored, like the Protocols of the Elder of Zion, which was produced by the Russian state to demonize Jews. And I want to bring up one last reason why I think people believe this nonsense, and this happened on social media, so I think it's relevant. Social media is a mirror. Recently, I had 2 experiences with social media which helped me kind of reflect on this fact. The first was I saw a few funny posts in Spanish. I didn't understand what the post was saying, but the video was funny. It was like some kid getting smacked, like whatever. It was a funny post. So I clicked it. I liked it. Before I knew it, on my Twitter feed, I had more posts in Spanish, and more, as I liked more posts in Spanish that I thought were funny. Before I knew it, half of my feed was in Spanish, and I couldn't read it. And I had to stop liking these posts, because before I knew it, I would not be able to understand any of my feed, and it would just be videos in Spanish, but, you know, I don't speak Spanish. And then 2 weeks later, once that problem had resolved, I saw a furry comic. It was kind of gay. It was kind of funny. And so I liked it. And then I had another furry comic that I liked. This was one of the biggest mistakes of my life, because before I knew it, my entire feed was just furry comics. I'm still having this problem now. I actually just tweeted about it. It's just furry comics everywhere. Every single other tweet is a furry comic now, or furry art, and I don't know how to deal with it. And I fear becoming a furry. So what happened in these 2 situations? Well, Twitter saw that I liked a post. Twitter saw that I interacted with the post, and Twitter wants me to stay on Twitter as long as possible so they can make as much money from advertisers and from my use of the site. And so what I interact with, they're going to feed me more of. It doesn't matter if it's a positive interaction or a negative interaction. Actually, the Facebook whistleblower that, came out about a year ago and talked about Facebook's business practices that was kind of immoral, they talked about how Facebook incentivizes negative interactions to stories, and that's why a lot of vitriolic communicating is going on Facebook, is because it is easier to get a negative reaction out of someone than a positive one, and a reaction is a reaction. That's how the algorithm treats it. Therefore, the Facebook algorithm feeds and rewards negative, hateful rhetoric and vitriolic rhetoric, because that's the type of rhetoric that's going to get the most interactions. And that same thing's true on a lot of media sites like Twitter. The more I interact with something, the more they're going to feed me of that thing. But that also means that if I have certain biases that are going to lead to me liking certain posts, that means my feed are going to be filled with that bias. If I like a bunch of liberal posts are going to fill my Twitter. If I like a bunch of communist posts are going to fill my Twitter. If I like a bunch of conservative or possibly even fascist posts, those types of posts are going to fill my Twitter. That's just how social media works. And so what I believe is that a lot of conspiracy theorists, they'll like 1 or maybe 2 conspiracies, maybe flat earth, maybe 9/11 was an inside job, maybe anything. But Twitter will notice that you liked it, and then they'll feed you more and more and more conspiracy theories before basically the entirety of your feed is conspiracy theories, and you're being force-fed all this drivel about 9/11 and, flying saucers and whatever. And after a while, not only do you expand your horizons and become a bigger conspiracy theorist and more conspiracy theories, but it gets to a point where this might be the only social interaction you're really having, or the only internet what you're only using the internet for. And it can get so bad to a point where you're looking at all this conspiracy nonsense and you think this is like the norm. And you'll see this sometimes where people will step out of these bubbles and they'll say wait, you support Biden? And then they'll just start cracking out in laughter like it's the funniest thing in the world and they can't believe anybody supports Biden. But Biden won the last election. Obviously, there were people who supported him. He won. Or they'll come out and they'll say, wait, you believe 9/11 wasn't an inside job? And they'll get a similar reaction. Or in this case, wait, you don't believe that Dylan is a tool of the deep state intelligence services of the United States in a NATO troll farm because he has a cartoon dog avatar and that's your only evidence? And then we're the crazy ones. Because they're in this bubble that reinforces their belief. So anytime they leave it, they're confronted with the fact that what they believe is actually, insane. And then they run back into the bubble because it's easier than reflecting on the fact that you've gone crazy. And so that mirror can end up compounding your beliefs and making you live in a bubble, which then just reinforces what you believe and cuts you off from the rest of society on social media. And then it just gets worse. So these are the big three things. I think A, people like to live in a Tom Clancy novel. It's a main character syndrome. They believe they're being targeted by the deep state because, you know, main character. 2, podcast nation. There's less of a barrier for information on the internet now. And so it's a lot easier to feed people schlop since there's less people, you know, between the schlop and you. And 3, social media is a mirror that is going to feed you back what you want to hear. So if you want to hear that the world is controlled by lizards, you're going to hear that the world is controlled by lizards. Anyway, my recommendation for you guys when dealing with people who are conspiracy theorists, or if you feel that you're falling into this hole, or if you just want to like make sure that you get more diverse perspectives, would be try to interact more on social media with posts that you disagree with. Try to follow a lot of accounts of more, you know, reputable news outlets. Or if you know somebody who is buying into these conspiracy theories, just try to recommend them a more diverse like media consumption. Give them more websites like NPR and less like InfoWars so they can get more reliable sources. I think that while it might be helpful for you to sit there and try to debate them on every issue, the thing that's going to have the most long-term effect on changing anyone away from this nonsense is going to be giving them a more diverse media consumption, because that is going to affect them way after you've started talking to them and ended talking to them. Like, you could be out of the room and they could still be on NPR scrolling through articles. So try to have people interact with people they disagree with more on social media, these conspiracy theorists that is, and try to give them more reputable news outlets they can consume from. Those are the only 2 recommendations I can make. I don't have a solution for all of society's ills, but that's my small tip. I hope you're having a great weekend, great week, whatever time you're watching this. And thank you so much for continuing to support the channel, as I am in Ukraine and this stuff can be very expensive to come out here and film. So I appreciate your continued viewership and your continued support. If you want to support me more by just viewing, liking, commenting, and subscribing to help with the algorithm, you can also go to my Patreon and help me there. I'm going to be reforming my Patreon very soon to give a lot of new rewards so you can like see the behind the scenes stuff from me filming in Ukraine, and I would greatly appreciate your continued support. I also stream from 6 p.m. to 3 p.m. every weekday Eastern Standard Time. I stream from 6 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. 3 p.m. is my Pacific Standard Time starting time. You're gonna have to cut that out, editor. If he leaves this in, I'm gonna look like a clown. And so therefore he must cut it out, because I cannot look like a clown in front of my many viewers. Love you guys. Have a good one.